The white walls of the medical bay seemed to pulse with each throb of Thora Jensen's headache. She stared at her reflection in the polished surface of a medical scanner, a stranger's face staring back at her. Auburn hair cropped military short, sharp green eyes, and a jagged scar running along her left temple. They told her the scar was from the battle where she'd nearly died, but like everything else, she couldn't remember it. "Captain Jensen, your combat assessment begins in 30 minutes, the AI's voice chimed overhead. She nodded, muscle memory taking over as she suited up in the combat armor they'd provided. Everything felt familiar yet foreign, like a dream she couldn't quite grasp. 3 weeks had passed since she'd awakened in this facility. They told her she was humanity's finest warrior, a decorated captain who'd led countless successful missions against the Stellar Collective, a race of beings who could manipulate energy and light itself. The war had been raging for 15 years, they said. But Thora couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The combat chamber hummed to life as she entered, holographic opponents materializing around her. As she moved through the exercise, her body flowed with practiced precision, each strike and maneuver executed perfectly. Yet in the midst of combat, a flash of memory struck her, a little girl with silver-streaked dark hair, laughing as she attempted to mimic these same combat moves. The vision threw her off balance, earning her a stinging hit from a holographic opponent. General Richards, watching from the observation deck, made a note on his tablet. "Still experiencing the anomalies, Captain?" "No, sir," Thora lied, pushing the strange memory aside. She'd learned quickly that mentioning these visions led to additional, medical evaluations, procedures that left her feeling hollow and confused. Later that evening, alone in her quarters, Thora accessed her personnel file for the 100th time. The dates and missions blurred together, but one detail always caught her attention, a gap in her service record, spanning nearly 2 years, marked simply as classified. Before that gap, her missions focused on diplomatic relations with the Stellar Collective. After it, she became known as the Stellar Hunter, leading strike teams against their settlements. As she prepared for bed, her hand brushed against something under her pillow, a small crystal that seemed to glow with its own inner light. She couldn't remember placing it there, yet something told her it was important. As she held it, another memory surfaced, the same little girl, older now, pressing the crystal into her hand, saying words she couldn't quite hear. A knock at her door startled her. She quickly hid the crystal as General Richards entered. "Captain, we've located a stellar outpost in the Vega sector. Your team deploys at 0600. He paused, studying her face. "Are you feeling yourself?" Thora straightened, pushing down her doubts. "Ready for combat, sir." As the general left, Thora's hand unconsciously moved to touch the hidden crystal. Tomorrow she would lead another mission, take more lives in a war she couldn't remember joining. But tonight, in the quiet darkness of her room, she allowed herself to wonder about the silver-haired girl who haunted her dreams, and why the thought of her filled Thora with both joy and devastating loss. The next morning, as her strike team's ship entered the Vega sector, Thora checked her weapons with mechanical precision. Each movement was perfect, practiced, yet she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd once used these same hands for creation rather than destruction. The crystal, now hanging in a hidden pocket near her heart, seemed to pulse with warmth. "Target in sight, Captain," her tactical officer announced. On the viewport, a small settlement shimmered into view, its crystalline structures reflecting the light of nearby stars. For a moment, it looked breathtakingly beautiful. Then the first explosions lit up the darkness of space, and Thora Jensen did what she'd been trained to do, even as something deep inside her screamed that everything about this was wrong. Nova Jensen stood at the helm of the diplomatic vessel, Starbridge, her silver-streaked dark hair reflecting the starlight. At 23, she'd become the youngest chief negotiator between humans and Stellas, her mixed heritage making her uniquely suited for the role. The gentle hum of the ship's crystalline core resonated with her stellar abilities, even as her human intuition warned her something was amiss. Another failed outpost, her second in command, Rylan, reported grimly. No survivors. His holographic display showed the wreckage of what had once been a peaceful settlement in the Vega sector. The attack pattern matches the others, precise, tactical. They knew exactly where to hit. Nova's fingers traced the ancient crystal hanging from her neck, her only connection to her mother, Captain Thora Jensen, supposedly killed in action 15 years ago. The official reports claimed it was a stellar attack, but Nova had spent years uncovering inconsistencies in that story. Someone's feeding them intelligence, she said, studying the attack patterns. These strikes are too perfect, too calculated. They know our weaknesses. She didn't add what she'd begun to suspect, that the attacks served someone's agenda on both sides. A soft chime interrupted her thoughts. Incoming transmission from the Human Coalition, their communications officer announced. The holographic form of Director Marcus materialized before them, his expression grave. Negotiator Jensen, the Coalition Council requests your presence at an emergency session. We've received a peace proposal from an unexpected source within the Stellar High Command. Nova's heart quickened. After years of escalating violence, any chance for peace seemed almost too good to be true. I'll set course for Coalition headquarters immediately, she replied, even as her instincts screamed caution. Later, in her private quarters, Nova accessed her mother's old service records for the 1000th time. She focused on the period just before Thora's disappearance, the classified missions, the sudden change in her stance toward the Stellas, and most intriguingly, a medical procedure with heavily redacted details. Her hand moved to the crystal at her neck, allowing her stellar abilities to connect with its energy. Like all their technology, the crystal stored memories, but she'd never been able to access more than fragments, a combat training session, laughter, her mother's voice saying, "I'll always find you." A knock at her door revealed Rylan, concern etched on his features. "Nova, I've been analyzing the attack data. There's something you need to see." He projected a detailed simulation of the recent strikes. "Watch the command ship's movement pattern." Nova's breath caught. The maneuvers were distinctive, a combination of human military precision and an understanding of stellar energy fields that seemed impossible. "I've seen this before," she whispered. "In my mother's combat logs." "There's more," Rylan continued. "I managed to decrypt part of a transmission from the attack force. Nova, their commander goes by Hunter." The significance hit her like a physical blow. Before her disappearance, Thora Jensen had been known by another title, the Star Hunter. "She's alive," Nova breathed, her mind racing. But why? Why would she? The questions multiplied, each more disturbing than the last. If Thora Jensen still lived, why was she attacking stellar settlements? Why had she abandoned her daughter? And most importantly, whose agenda was she really serving? The ship's AI announced their approach to Coalition headquarters, interrupting Nova's thoughts. As she prepared for the emergency council session, she made a decision. After 15 years of searching for answers, she was close to the truth. Whatever game was being played, whatever forces had torn her family apart, she would uncover them. The crystal at her neck pulsed warmly, almost in approval. Nova squared her shoulders, checking her reflection. Her father's human features blended seamlessly with her stellar heritage, silver-streaked hair, slightly luminescent skin, and eyes that shifted between deep brown and starlight silver. She was a bridge between two worlds, and perhaps that's exactly what both sides needed right now. As she headed to the shuttle bay, Nova couldn't shake the feeling that the upcoming peace negotiations would bring her face to face with the answers she sought, and perhaps, with the mother she'd lost. Whether Thora Jensen would prove to be friend or foe remained to be seen. The Coalition headquarters loomed before them, a massive structure of steel and crystalline architecture that represented the brief period of cooperation between humans and Stellas. Nova touched the crystal one last time, drawing strength from its familiar warmth. "I'll find you, Mother," she whispered. "And I'll discover the truth, whatever it costs." The coalition headquarters' grand negotiation chamber buzzed with tension as delegates from both human and stellar factions gathered. Nova stood at the center of the chamber, her dual heritage making her a living symbol of what could be possible. As she prepared to address the assembly, alarms suddenly blared through the station. "Multiple breaches detected. Unknown forces have penetrated our security grid." The announcement sparked immediate chaos. Nova's combat training kicked in as she assessed the situation. The attack pattern was familiar, too familiar. In another section of the station, Thora Jensen led her strike team through the corridors with practiced precision. Her mission was clear: disrupt the peace talks and capture key stellar delegates. Yet something felt off. The crystal hidden beneath her armor burned against her skin, almost in warning. "Target location ahead, Captain," her tactical officer whispered. Thora raised her hand, signaling her team to halt. That's when she felt it, a strange resonance, like an echo of her own energy signature. Behind those doors waited something that made her head pound with half-formed memories. Inside the chamber, Nova organized the evacuation of civilian delegates. She could sense the attackers' approach, their energy signatures leaving distinct patterns in the station's crystalline architecture. One signature in particular caught her attention. It felt like looking in a mirror, yet distorted. The chamber doors exploded inward. Through the smoke and chaos, two figures moved toward each other, each responding to an inexplicable pull. Thora raised her weapon, targeting the young woman with silver-streaked hair. Nova lifted her hands, stellar energy crackling between her fingers. Their eyes met. Thora's finger froze on the trigger. The girl's combat stance, it was her own, perfectly mirrored. Those eyes, shifting between brown and silver, triggered a cascade of fractured memories, teaching a child these very moves, watching silver streaks appear in dark hair, a crystal passing from hand to hand. Nova's energy field flickered as she stared at her opponent. The woman's face matched the fragments stored in her crystal, aged but unmistakable. "Mother," she whispered, her voice carrying through the sudden silence. The word hit Thora like a physical blow. Her weapon wavered. I don't." More images flooded her mind, a child's laughter, training sessions filled with joy instead of violence, a love that transcended species. "Captain, awaiting your orders," her tactical officer barked. The moment shattered. Thora's conditioning reasserted itself, pushing back the confusing memories. Her weapon steadied. Nova saw the change come over her mother's face, the warmth replaced by cold efficiency. She made a split-second decision. With precise control, she released a pulse of stellar energy, not at her mother, but at the ceiling above her team. Thora reacted instinctively, diving clear of the falling debris. She rolled to her feet, finding herself separated from her team. Face to face with the young woman who called her mother. Who moved like her. Who triggered memories she wasn't supposed to have. "You know me," Nova said, keeping her hands raised in a non-threatening gesture. "Deep down, you remember. They took those memories from you, but they couldn't take everything. The crystal you carry, you kept it all these years because part of you remembered." Thora's hand moved unconsciously to where the crystal lay hidden. "How did you?" "Because you gave it to me, 15 years ago. A way to find each other if we were ever separated." Nova slowly reached for her own crystal. "They're linked, just like we are." For a moment, something flickered in Thora's eyes, recognition, confusion, pain. Then her comm unit crackled. "Captain Jensen, execute primary objective immediately." The command triggered something in Thora's mind, sharp pain followed by artificial clarity. Her weapon snapped up. "You're trying to confuse me. Playing tricks. I am humanity's defender. The Stellas are the enemy. Then why haven't you shot me?" Nova challenged softly. Why did you keep the crystal? Why do I know every combat move you're about to make? She took a step forward. They conditioned you, but they couldn't erase everything. I'm your daughter, and I can prove it. Through the smoke and chaos of the chamber, mother and daughter stood locked in a moment of truth. Thora's finger rested on the trigger, her mind a battlefield of conflicting realities. And in her chest, the crystal pulsed with increasing warmth, as if trying to tell her something she desperately needed to remember. The moment stretched between them, fragile as crystal. Thora's weapon remained trained on Nova, but her hands had begun to tremble. Through the station's windows, the stars seemed to pulse in rhythm with their linked crystals. A new voice cut through the tension. Impressive reunion. General Richards emerged from the smoke, flanked by armed guards. Though I must admit, I'd hoped to keep this family drama buried a bit longer. Nova's eyes narrowed as she recognized the man from classified files she'd uncovered. Project Star Hunter, she said, her voice cold. You're the one who ordered the memory wipe. A necessary procedure, Richards replied, his tone almost casual. Your mother was our best operative, but her attachment to your stellar heritage was becoming problematic. Sometimes the most effective weapons need recalibration. The word weapons triggered something in Thora's mind. More memories surfaced, a secret research facility, discovering her pregnancy, the joy of raising a child who embodied the best of both worlds. And then, betrayal. Pain. The feeling of her memories being stripped away. You told me the Stellas killed my family, Thora said, her voice shaking. That they were monsters who needed to be destroyed. Richard shrugged. A convenient narrative. The truth is, Captain, you were about to expose our entire operation. We couldn't have that. Your hybrid daughter was proof that peaceful coexistence was possible. It would have undermined everything we'd worked for. The attacks, Nova realized, pieces falling into place. You've been orchestrating them on both sides. Keeping the war going. But why? Power, of course. A new figure stepped forward, High Commander Voss of the Stellar Military Council. War is profitable for those who know how to exploit it. Humanity fears our abilities, while my people fear human expansion. Fear keeps both sides dependent on their military leadership. Thora's head pounded as more memories broke through the conditioning. She remembered discovering evidence of their conspiracy, planning to go public with Nova's mother, a stellar diplomat. Then the ambush, the capture, the pain of having her life erased. Your mother was going to ruin everything, Richards continued. She and your stellar parent had proof of our collaboration. The attack that supposedly killed them? Staged. But Captain Jensen proved too valuable to eliminate completely. With some adjustments, she became our most effective agent. Nova felt sick. Years of searching for the truth, only to discover this web of corruption. You tore our family apart. Used my mother as a weapon against her own people. Against both her peoples, Voss corrected. After all, you're living proof that she belonged to both worlds. He raised a hand, stellar energy crackling. Unfortunately, this touching reunion ends now. Can't have you exposing our little arrangement. Everything happened at once. Voss launched an energy blast at Nova. Thora's body moved before her mind could process it, diving to push her daughter out of the way. The crystal at her chest exploded with warmth, and with it, the last barriers in her mind shattered. Mother and daughter rolled behind a fallen column as weapons fire erupted around them. Thora looked at Nova with new eyes, clear eyes, seeing in her face the perfect blend of herself and the woman she had loved. Nova, she whispered, the name feeling right on her tongue. I remember. Not everything, but enough. Her hand found her daughter's, their crystals pulsing in sync. I remember your mother, how we fell in love, how we wanted to change things. How they tried to destroy it all, Nova finished, squeezing her mother's hand. Above them, Richards was shouting orders while Voss prepared another attack. "We have to stop them," Thora said. "Not just save ourselves, but expose everything. End this war they've been nurturing for their own gain." Nova nodded, her mind already racing. "The crystals, they don't just store memories. They've been recording everything. Every conversation, every revelation." A plan began to form. "We can broadcast the truth to both sides, but we'll need to reach the station's communication hub." Thora checked her weapon, a fierce smile forming. "Then let's make these bastards regret giving me all that combat training." She looked at her daughter with pride. "Ready to show them what happens when they mess with our family?" Around them, chaos reigned as both human and stellar forces converged on their position. But for the first time in 15 years, Thora Jensen felt truly alive. She had her memories, her daughter, and a chance to right the wrongs that had been done to both their peoples. The crystals hummed with power, mother and daughter's energies intertwining as they prepared to fight back. The truth was about to come to light, and with it, the chance for real peace, the peace they should have had all along. The station's emergency lights cast everything in a pulsing red glow as Thora and Nova fought their way through the corridors. Years of combat training flowed between them in perfect synchronization, Thora's precise military strikes complementing Nova's stellar energy manipulation. They moved as one unit, as if making up for 15 years of lost time. "The communication hub is 2 levels up," Nova called out, deflecting enemy fire with an energy shield. "But they'll have it heavily guarded." "Not as heavily as they should," Thora replied, a hint of her old confidence returning. "I helped design this station's security protocols, before they wiped my memory. There's a maintenance shaft that leads directly to the hub's control room." Behind them, Richard's voice boomed through the station speakers. "All forces converge on level 7. The hybrid and the traitor must not reach the communication systems." They found the maintenance access panel, Thora's muscle memory guiding her fingers to the hidden release mechanism. As they climbed, Nova's crystal began to pulse more intensely. "Mom," she said, the words still new and wonderful on her tongue, "the crystals, they're reacting to something. The energy signatures are getting stronger." Thora touched her own crystal, feeling its warmth. "Your mother, my wife, she always said these crystals were more than memory storage. They're connected to the heart of stellar technology somehow." They emerged into the hub's control room, only to find High Commander Voss waiting for them. Energy crackled around him like a storm. "How touching," he sneered. "The prodigal weapon returns to her offspring. Tell me, Thora Jensen, how does it feel to remember all the stellar lives you took while under Richard's control?" "About as good as it'll feel exposing how you betrayed your own people," Thora shot back. She raised her weapon while Nova gathered her energy, both ready to strike. "You really think broadcasting the truth will change anything?" Voss laughed. "We've spent decades nurturing this conflict. The hatred runs too deep now. No one will believe you." "Maybe not," Nova said, her voice steady. "But they'll believe this." She pulled out her crystal, its glow now brilliant. "Our crystals haven't just been recording, they've been linking to every system they've encountered, gathering proof. Including your private communications, your secret accounts, everything." For the first time, fear flickered across Voss's face. Behind them, Richards burst in with his security team, weapon raised. "Kill them both," he ordered. Now. What happened next would be debated in history books for years to come. Nova and Thora's crystals resonated together, creating a feedback loop with the station's crystalline architecture. Energy surged through the room as mother and daughter joined hands, their combined human and stellar nature creating something entirely new. The crystals projected their stored memories and data through the station's communication array, not just evidence of the conspiracy, but the personal cost of the war. Thora's memories of love across species lines, the joy of Nova's birth, the pain of separation, the years of manipulation and forced violence. Along with it went financial records, secret communications, everything that proved how Richards and Voss had orchestrated decades of conflict for their own gain. The broadcast reached every human and stellar settlement in range. On countless worlds, people watched the truth unfold. They saw how their fears had been manipulated, how their hatred had been carefully cultivated by those who profited from it. In the control room, Voss launched a desperate attack, while Richards ordered his men to open fire. But Nova's shield held, strengthened by her mother's tactical positioning. Together, they were unstoppable. "It's over," Thora declared, watching as both human and stellar security forces arrived to arrest Richards and Voss. "The truth is out. All of it." Nova lowered her shield, exhausted but triumphant. "What happens now?" "Now," Thora said, pulling her daughter close, "we rebuild. Both our family and the peace we should have had all along." She touched her crystal, feeling its warmth. "Your mother would be proud of you. Of what you've become." "Of both of us," Nova corrected, smiling through tears. "We found each other again. We finished what you and she started." In the days that followed, both human and stellar societies grappled with the revelations. The path to peace wouldn't be easy. Too much blood had been shed, too many wounds still needed healing. But with the truth exposed, real change became possible. Thora Jensen retained some scars from her years of conditioning, gaps in her memory that might never fully heal. But with her daughter by her side, she found a new purpose, building bridges between worlds, just as she had once done with the woman she loved. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, two crystals continued to glow, their light a testament to a love that transcended species, a truth that survived manipulation, and a bond between mother and daughter that proved stronger than any weapon of war. The end was really just a beginning, of healing, of understanding, and of a future where the boundaries between human and stellar began to fade, one family at a time.